Many international law jobs require strong English skills. Employers often expect candidates to explain global organizations like the United Nations, the World Trade Organization, or the International Court of Justice in clear and professional English. In this lesson, you'll learn the key vocabulary and grammar to talk about international organizations confidently. Skills that can help you succeed in job interviews and professional legal settings. Today's lesson has three goals. First, you will learn key words like United Nations, General Assembly, and World Trade Organization. Second, you'll practice using there is and there are to describe organizations and their members. Finally, you will use simple legal phrases to explain what these organizations do in international law. Imagine this situation. You are in a class, an interview, or a professional discussion. Someone asks, "What is the United Nations? Who are its members? What does it do?" You need to answer. Simply, you can say, "The United Nations is an international organization. There are 193 member states. There is a General Assembly where every state has one vote. There's also a Security Council that decides on peace and security." This story shows why today's vocabulary and grammar are so useful when talking about international law in English. The United Nations, often called the UN, is the most famous international organization in the world. It was created in 1945 after World War II with the goal of preventing another world conflict and promoting peace, cooperation, and human rights. Today, the UN has 193 member states, almost every country in the world. That's why we often say there are 193 member states in the United Nations. Imagine being asked in an interview, "What is the UN?" And you can answer, "The UN is an international organization where almost all countries are members. It is a place for countries to meet, cooperate, and solve global problems together." This makes the UN the central stage for international law and diplomacy. The General Assembly is one of the most important bodies of the United Nations. Every member state, from the smallest island nation to the largest global power, has one equal vote. It is often called the Parliament of the World. Every September, there is a General Assembly, and this meeting is in New York. Heads of state and foreign ministers from all over the world gather to deliver speeches, debate global issues, and vote on resolutions. That's why we say there is a General Assembly meeting every year. For example, if someone asks, "Where do world leaders meet every year to discuss global challenges?" you can answer, "There is a General Assembly in New York where all UN members vote equally." The General Assembly shows the democratic side of the UN. Every country, big or small, has a voice. Now, moving away from the democratic side of the UN, let's talk about the Security Council. The Security Council is the most powerful organ of the United Nations when it comes to peace and security. Unlike the General Assembly, its decisions are binding. This means countries must follow them. The Security Council has 15 members. Five are permanent members: the United States, Russia, China, France, and the United Kingdom. These five have special power, called the veto, to block decisions. The other 10 members are elected for 2 years. That's why we say there are five permanent members of the Security Council. For example, imagine a conflict breaks out in a country. The Security Council may vote to send a peacekeeping mission or to impose sanctions. If someone asks which UN body can authorize military action or sanctions, you can answer the Security Council with its 5 permanent members and 10 rotating members. This council is where the most urgent global security decisions are made. The International Court of Justice, or the ICJ. It is the judicial branch of the UN. It is based in The Hague, Netherlands. Its main role is to resolve legal disputes between states. There are 15 judges in the ICJ, elected by both the General Assembly and the Security Council. These judges represent different regions of the world and serve 9-year terms. That's why we say there are 15 judges in the International Court of Justice. For example, imagine 2 countries have a border dispute. They cannot agree, so they bring the case to the ICJ. The court hears both sides and issues a binding decision. If you're asked which international court decides disputes between countries, you can answer ICJ with its 15 judges located in The Hague. This makes the ICJ a key institution in promoting peaceful resolution of conflicts under international law. The World Trade Organization, or WTO, is the international body that sets and manages the rules of global trade. It was created in 1995 to replace the GATT, General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. The WTO supervises hundreds of trade agreements. That's why we say there are many trade agreements supervised by the WTO. For example, imagine 2 countries disagree about tariffs on agricultural products. They take the dispute, the problem, to the WTO. The organization provides a system to settle the conflict fairly and according to international trade law. If you are asked which organization manages global trade rules, you can answer the World Trade Organization, which supervises many trade agreements and resolves trade disputes between countries. The WTO is essential for lawyers working in international business and trade. The World Health Organization, or WHO, is part of the United Nations system. It was created in 1948 to coordinate international health issues. Its main role is to monitor public health, fight diseases, and support countries in emergencies. For example, you can say there is a World Health Organization program to fight disease. Imagine there's a global outbreak. The WHO provides information, sends experts, and helps distribute vaccines. In an interview or professional conversation, you could explain the WHO is a UN agency that coordinates global health. There are vaccination programs, which we know well, and there are emergency responses when epidemics occur. This makes the WHO one of the most visible international organizations for everyday people. The International Monetary Fund, or IMF, is an organization created to promote global financial stability. It provides advice, monitors economies, and gives loans to countries facing financial crises. For example, you can say there is an IMF loan program for developing economies. Imagine a country faces a severe economic crisis and cannot pay its debts. The IMF may step in to provide a loan with conditions to help stabilize the economy. In simple English, you can explain the IMF is an international organization that helps countries with money problems. There are loans and there are programs to support recovery. The IMF is often mentioned in global news whenever a country negotiates financial support. The World Bank is another important international financial institution. Its focus is not on short term loans like the IMF, but on long term development projects. It funds infrastructure, education, healthcare, and poverty reduction programs. For example, you can say there are World Bank projects in many countries to support infrastructure and education. Imagine a country wants to build a new highway or expand access to clean water. The World Bank provides funding and technical expertise. In plain English, you can say the World Bank helps countries develop. There are projects for schools, roads, and hospitals. The World Bank plays a key role in international law and development cooperation. In English, when we describe the existence of something, an organization, a building, or members, we use there is for one thing and there are for more than one. This is very useful in international law because we often talk about organizations and their structures. For example, there is one United Nations. This means only one UN exists in the world. There are 193 member states in the UN. This shows the number of members, which is plural, two or more. Now, imagine you are in a job interview and someone asks, how many member states are in the United Nations? A clear answer is there are 193 member states in the UN. Or someone asks, is there an international court for states? You can say yes, there is the International Court of Justice with 15 judges. Notice how we always begin with there is or there are. This grammar structure makes your English simple, professional, and easy to understand when describing international organizations. Let's look at more examples of how we use there is and there are with international organizations. There is a General Assembly meeting every year. Here we use there is because we are talking about one meeting. There are 15 judges in the International Court of Justice. This time we use there are because the subject is 15 judges, plural. There are many trade agreements supervised by the WTO. Again, there are is correct because we have multiple agreements. Now imagine you are explaining international institutions in English. You could say, there is a Security Council that makes binding resolutions. There are 5 permanent members of the Security Council. These examples show how the same grammar works again and again to describe facts, numbers, and roles in international law. Now let's correct some very common mistakes. Some learners say there is 193 member states in the UN, but this is wrong because 193 member states is plural. The correct form is there are 193 member states in the UN. Another mistake is there are one United Nations. This is incorrect because one United Nations is singular, one. The correct form is there is one United Nations. The rule is simple. Use there is with singular nouns, one court, one meeting, one organization. Use there are with plural nouns, two judges, 5 permanent members, many agreements. Practicing this carefully will help you sound clear and professional when talking about international organizations. A member state is simply a country that belongs to an international organization. For example, Costa Rica is a member state of the UN. Now imagine you are in a class or a meeting and someone asks, how many countries are in the UN? Like we talked about many times, we say, there are 193 member states in the United Nations. Each member state has rights and responsibilities. For example, in the UN, every member state can vote in the General Assembly. This means that big countries like the United States and small countries like Panama are all member states with one equal vote. A binding resolution is a decision that countries must follow. It is not just advice, it is a legal order. For example, there is a binding resolution from the Security Council about sanctions. This means that countries must obey the decision. They cannot choose to ignore it. In contrast, decisions in the General Assembly are usually not binding. They are more like recommendations. But when the Security Council makes a binding resolution, every member state must follow it. This is why the Security Council is powerful. It can make decisions that are binding on all member states. A peacekeeping mission is when the UN sends soldiers, police, or observers to help keep peace after a conflict. For example, there is a peacekeeping mission in the region to protect civilians and support stability. Peacekeepers do not start wars. Their role is to stop violence, protect people, and help countries return to peace. You may have seen UN peacekeepers on the news. They wear blue helmets and work under the UN flag. So when you hear peacekeeping mission, think of the UN helping countries that are trying to end a war or avoid new fighting. An international tribunal is a special court created to decide very serious cases, often about crimes under international law. For example, there is an international tribunal for war crimes in The Hague. Tribunals may deal with war crimes, genocide, or crimes against humanity. Unlike the International Court of Justice, which hears cases between states, tribunals often hear cases against individuals who committed very serious crimes. So if you hear International Tribunal, think of a court created to bring justice after wars or crimes that affect the whole world. Global cooperation means countries helping each other to solve problems that affect everyone. For example, there is global cooperation to fight climate change and pandemics. One country cannot solve these problems alone. They require cooperation, countries working together. That's why organizations like the UN, WHO, and WTO exist. They make global cooperation possible. So when you say global cooperation, you are describing countries acting together as partners to face challenges that cross borders. Let's finish with the story that brings everything together. Imagine you are in a class and you need to discuss international law. You are asked to explain the role of international organizations in simple English. You can say, there is one United Nations. There are 193 member states. Every member state has one vote in the General Assembly. Then you add, there is also a Security Council. There are 5 permanent members and 10 rotating members. The Security Council can make a binding resolution when there is a problem with peace and security. Next, you explain the court. There is an International Court of Justice with 15 judges. It decides disputes between states and gives advisory opinions. You continue. There is a World Trade Organization. There are many trade agreements supervised by the WTO. If there is a trade dispute, there is a process inside the WTO. For health and development, you might say, There is a World Health Organization that helps in emergencies. There is an IMF that gives loans to countries in crisis. There are World Bank projects for schools, roads, and hospitals. Finally, you say, all of these organizations show global cooperation. There is global cooperation to protect peace, solve conflicts, and fight problems like disease, poverty, and climate change. You used all of today's vocabulary and today's grammar, there is, there are, and today's legal phrases: member state, binding resolution, peacekeeping mission, international tribunal, global cooperation. It shows how you can explain international organizations step by step in professional, clear English.